Henry David's House. These are Thoreau's own words, edited by Stephen Schnurr and illustrated with wonderful watercolors by Peter Fiore. And it starts with a quote from one of Thoreau's neighbors, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Every spirit builds itself a house, and beyond its house a world, and beyond its world a heaven. Henry David's House. Near the end of March, I borrowed an axe and went down to the woods by Walden Pond and began to cut down some tall white pines for timber. It was a pleasant hillside where I worked, covered with pine woods, through which I looked out on the pond. The ice in the pond was not yet dissolved, though there were some open spaces, and it was all dark-colored and saturated with water. On the 1st of April, it rained and melted the ice, and in the early parts of the day, which was very foggy, I heard a stray goose groping about over the pond and cackling as if lost, or like the spirit of the fog. So I went on for some days cutting and hewing timber, and also studs and rafters, all with my narrow axe, singing to myself. My days in the woods were not very long ones, yet I usually carried my dinner of bread and butter and read the newspaper in which it was wrapped at noon, sitting amid the green pine boughs which I had cut off. Sometimes a rambler in the wood was attracted by the sound of my axe, and we chatted pleasantly over the chips which I had made. In the middle of April, my house was framed and ready for the raising. I had already bought the shanty of James Collins, an Irishman who worked on the Fitchburg Railroad, for boards. I took down this building, drawing the nails, and removed it to the pond side by small cartloads. One early thrush gave me a note or two as I drove along the woodland path. I dug my cellar in the side of a hill sloping to the south, where a woodchuck had formerly dug his burrow, down through the sumac and blackberry roots, 6 feet square by 7 feet deep, to a fine sand where potatoes would not freeze in any winter. At length, in the beginning of May, with the help of some of my acquaintances, I set up the frame of my house. I began to occupy my house on the 4th of July, as soon as it was boarded and roofed. But before boarding, I laid the foundation of a chimney at one end, bringing 2 cartloads of stones up the hill from the pond in my arms. I built the chimney after my hoeing in the fall, before a fire became necessary for warmth, doing my cooking in the meanwhile out of doors on the ground early in the morning. I have thus a tight shingled and plastered house, 10 feet wide by 15 long, and 8 feet posts, with a garret and a closet, a large window on each side, 2 trap doors, 1 door at the end, and a brick fireplace opposite. I have also a small woodshed adjoining, made chiefly of the stuff which was left after building the house. My furniture, part of which I made myself, consisted of a bed, a table, a desk, 3 chairs, 1 for solitude, 2 for friendship, 3 for society, a looking glass 3 inches in diameter, a pair of tongs and andirons, a kettle, a skillet, and a frying pan, a dipper, a wash bowl, 2 knives and forks, 3 plates, 1 cup, 1 spoon, a jug for oil, a jug for molasses, and a japanned lamp. My dwelling was small, but it seemed larger for being a single apartment and remote from neighbors. All the attractions of a house were concentrated in one room. It was kitchen, chamber, parlor, and keeping room. Sometimes in the summer morning, having taken my accustomed bath, I sat in my sunny doorway from sunrise till noon, wrapped in a reverie, amidst the pines and hickories and sumacs, in undisturbed solitude and stillness, while the birds sang around or flitted noiselessly through the house, until by the sun falling in at my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. In warm evenings, I frequently sat in a boat playing the flute, and saw the perch, which I seemed to have charmed, hovering around me, and the moon traveling over the ribbed bottom, which was strewed with the wrecks of the forest. On the 1st of September, I saw 2 or 3 small maples turn scarlet across the pond. Gradually, from week to week, the character of each tree came out, and it admired itself, reflected in the smooth mirror of the lake. In October, I went a-graping to the river meadows and loaded myself with clusters more precious for their beauty and fragrance than for food. I collected a small store of wild apples for coddling. When chestnuts were ripe, I laid up half a bushel for winter. It was very exciting at that season to roam the boundless chestnut woods with a bag on my shoulder and a stick to open burrs within my hand. Occasionally I climbed and shook the trees. Many a traveler came out of his way to see me in the inside of my house. One real runaway slave among the rest, whom I helped to forward toward the North Star. Children came a-berrying, railroad men taking a Sunday morning walk in clean shirts, fishermen and hunters, poets and philosophers, in short, all honest pilgrims who came out to the woods for freedom's sake and really left the village behind. I was ready to greet. At length, the winter set in good earnest, just as I had finished plastering, and the wind began to howl around the house. One night in the beginning of winter, before the pound froze over, I was startled by the loud honking of a goose, and stepping to the door, heard the sound of their wings, like a tempest in the woods as they flew low over my house. A slight sound at evening lifts me up by the ears and makes life seem inexpressibly grand. I also heard the whooping of the ice in the pond as if it were restless in its bed. Sometimes I heard the foxes as they ranged over the snow crust in moonlit nights in search of a partridge or other game, barking like forest dogs. Usually the red squirrel waked me in the dawn, coursing over the roof and up and down the sides of the house. One attraction in coming to the woods to live was that I should have leisure and opportunity to see spring come in. In April, the pigeons were seen again, and in due time I heard the martins twittering over my clearing. Early in May, the oaks, hickories, maples, and other trees just putting out amidst the pine woods around the pond imparted a brightness like sunshine to the landscape, especially in cloudy days, as if the sun were breaking through mists and shining faintly on the hillsides here and there. On the 3rd or 4th of May, I saw a loon in the pond, and during the first week of the month, I heard the whippoorwill. The phoebe had already come and looked in at my door and window. We can never have enough of nature.